Palantir had a massive crash after hours, falling 9% from all-time highs. I'm going to talk about how I was able to predict this crash, what you should be doing if you're a current Palantir shareholder or you're looking to get into Palantir. And we're also going to talk about HIMS and HERS Health earnings because that's a new position in the portfolio. But first, we're going to dive into the markets and I'm going to tell you kind of what I think and where the market is going from here. So let's go ahead and jump into it. As you can see, portfolio is hanging out around that 802,000 mark. We have fully recovered from the crash in my portfolio, yet the market is still down about 7 to 9%. So we still have way more room to go in this portfolio. And if you do want to see me turn this into $10 million in the next 7 to 10 years, be sure to be subscribed. Now, take a look at the Discord right now. As you can see, there is a channel in my Discord called Leaps Entry and Exit, where I give specific trades, leaps ideas, where we're making tens of thousands of dollars. And I show when people should exit. And as you can see, Tommy exited the Palantir Leaps, $2,135, right? If we look here, Philip, $5,358 on the Palantir Leap. Aaron, $5,858, okay? And then if we go down here, you could even see Ghislaine, $4,846 on the Palantir Leaps. I was telling everyone to exit these Leaps call options because I knew that Palantir was going to have a massive sell-off. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the market, okay? Tariffs, Trump tariffs, where are those? Where's the progress on those? Well, they asked Donald Trump. Donald Trump said on US Air Force One, he said that, he's looking to make a meeting with many countries, including China, on trade deals. And his main priority with China was to secure a fair trade deal. Reporters also asked him if any trade agreements would be announced this week. And Trump said that they very well could be, but gave no details. So that is something, there is definitely some upside risk to this market because the moment that President Trump announces some sort of good deal with China, you could expect the market to rally at least 3 to 5% in just one day, okay? So that is some upside risk. Right now, the market is already priced in 145% tariffs on China and really no further progress. So that's already priced into the markets. Now, there is a FOMC meeting this Wednesday where Jerome Powell, federal chairman, will be speaking on interest rates and where they are headed for the future. But if we look at the CME FedWatch tool, which predicts the interest rate cuts, we could see that an interest rate cut is 95% chance being predicted in July, okay? So we're not going to get one this month, most likely not going to get one next month, but getting one in July. And that's really what we want to hear from Jerome Powell is some more dovish sentiment regarding interest rates and continuing to cut those. So that could also propel the market much higher. But I do believe that the market is headed for a pullback, okay? And I said that in my last video on Friday, my market update video. And I said, hey, we may hit this 493 area, which we touched almost touched on Friday. And then today we kind of closed below Friday's close. So what I think is going to happen is I think we are going to get a continuation downwards, potentially to this 475 level. And yes, while that's not such a huge pullback, that's only like 2.5% from here, that will be an opportunity to grab up some more leaps on your favorite stocks, maybe some leaps on QQQ, or just more shares if you are enjoying buying shares, okay? So this is where I'm eyeing on QQQ to kind of take advantage and getting in for that next run up, which we could very well head up way higher from here, especially on good news with China. If we look at the VIX, the Fear and Volatility Index, this is exactly what I look at to allocate my capital and make sure that I have cash on the table, right? I have about 18% cash in the account, in one of my accounts. VIX is at 23, so we could see a little spike from here on the VIX as well, potentially up to this 27 mark, and then maybe head back down to this $20 range where basically that is showing that yes, there's fear, but not as much as before, okay? We saw tons of fear back on April 7th. VIX went up to 60, which hasn't happened since August 5th, 2024. And then if you go back all the way to COVID in 2020, that's the last time we saw it that high. So There's a very good probability that fear is going to continue subsiding, but in the short term, we might see a little spike in fear, and that would be a good advantage to continue to load up into your favorite stocks. Now, let's talk about the most important, okay? Let's talk about Palantir. Palantir, what I predicted, okay? If we look at the chart that I drew back on Friday, I even left my drawings, all right? I'm not perfect at this, and by no means that, I'm trying to be a Nostradamus of stocks, but okay, I did listen to kind of what the market makers were pricing in, right? If we go to the options chain on Palantir, all right, and this is how I do it. This is kind of how I make my predictions. Really, I'm just going based off market maker pricing. They were pricing in, $18 move, right? And we were trading at 124, even as high as, if we go back to Palantir, let's go back there, we traded as high as 129. And $18 from there leaves it at about $111. And that's kind of close to where we're trading now, okay? So funny enough, my prediction was that Palantir was actually going to spike on the morning of earnings, right? Like tomorrow morning, I expected us to spike up to 134, 135, somewhere around there, and then have a pullback again, all the way down to 112 is kind of where I drew it, okay? So I knew there was gonna be a pullback based off of investor sentiment. We had a huge run up, okay? So the probabilities of continuation of a huge move get lower and lower as the stock keeps going up, okay? And that's basically how I trade, is probabilities. And if you look at the lows back on April 7th, all the way till now, we're up 87% in just a few weeks, okay? So that is not something that you want to be chasing at these levels, even though Palantir is literally one of my favorite stocks in the portfolio, and I plan on adding more. There's just a safer way to trade it, and I'm gonna talk about how I would trade it going forward and what I did. We're even going to look at my position. But first, let's talk about the earnings. So the reason their earnings, the stock didn't just propel up to 135, 140, 150 like people might have been predicting, is because the earnings weren't as stellar as previous quarters, okay? Back in December, the earnings per share beat was 23%, so it was a 23% surprise. This quarter, it's only a 1% surprise on earnings per share, and revenue was only a 2% surprise versus a 6.65% surprise back in December. So, guidance on the stock is not as high as people expect. Obviously, the surprise was not as big as previous quarters, and the overall market is we're in this market of take profits, okay? Because VIX is still high, fear is still elevated, people don't know what's going to happen next. So I knew that just by looking at the chart, okay, there was a lot of sellers, or a lot of buyers rather, at 124 back before this crash. And all of those people that were buying up here had to stomach a 50% drawdown on their position and just kind of wait this out for 2 months, right, until recovery. So those people are looking to get out, right, and reposition and maybe wait for another pullback to get back in. So I knew there was going to be a lot of selling pressure up here. And of course, a little bit overbought on the RSI, obviously nothing extreme, but definitely overbought. And that's just kind of how the earnings played out. So if we look at the earnings, Palantir US commercial revenue jumped 71% to 255 million. They have $1 billion run rate on the US commercial. So that's great. This is all great long-term, and this is something you want to be looking at with purchasing more Palantir shares or Leaps call options, okay? Or even cash secured puts, which I'm gonna talk about. But they did, sell software to medical providers like Mount Sinai, Cleveland Clinic, oil companies such as BP, Exxon, and automakers such as Stellantis and more. So they are growing massively as a company. This is good. Their stock got a little bit too hot and is due for a nice little pullback. And that's great because that provides opportunity for me and you. All right, so what I'm doing tomorrow, we're gonna take a look at my Palantir position. I'm getting these shares called away, right? I already sold covered calls on these shares, 102 and 100. That was already done with. I already knew those were going to get called away. So those will get called away in 4 days. I'll make my profit there, right? The difference, between. I'll make my profit because my cost basis on these was like 96. I'm selling the 100 call, so I'll make $4. And then here I sold at my cost basis of 102 because I had these before the crash, okay? Now, what I did post or pre-earnings was instead of doing the leaps options, I closed out all my leaps, took my huge profit, and I sold 7 May 23rd 99 puts, okay? So I got far enough away from the stock to collect still 3.5% of income, but far enough away to where if I got assigned, I would be happy buying at that price. So $99, we're not even close to there. We're still at 112. So, these are going to be probably at max profit tomorrow because of the volatility crush in those options. But what I would do is I would go out 32 to 39 days. Okay, we'll just go 32 days out. And tomorrow, when this thing opens up, right, you could go down to the 25 delta, which let's just say is the 100 strike or the 99 strike rather, right? And you could still collect a lot of income. Let's do the math. So if you go to the 99 strike like I did, right, but I went to the May 23rd, we could go out to June 6th, right? That's 259 bucks divided by 99. That's still a 2.6% return. So pretty safe. Obviously the return is a little bit less because the volatility has came in quite a bit on the options, but still a massive return on the stock. And if you multiply that by 12, that's a 31% return annualized, right? Now, if you want to get a little bit more aggressive, you can go to 30 delta and collect about, let's just say 400 bucks at the 103 strike, okay? And that's most likely what I'll do now. And you're going to make almost 4% on those. So that's kind of like where I'm thinking of going, somewhere between the 100 strike and the 104 strike, depending on where Palantir goes tomorrow. But I do plan on adding more, as I think that my shares are most likely going to get called away in 4 days. So I want to build up this core position and make sure I have that exposure. So Palantir, the safest way to play it right now is the cash secured puts, because that's going to allow you to get far away from where the stock's trading. Like if you did the 103s, right? I'm going to move it up here. That's 103. The stock's, trading around here, 112, right? So you still have some room from where the stock is trading to potentially getting assigned. That's still a negative, an 8% discount on the stock if you did get assigned and you got paid 4% to do it, okay? So that's what I'm thinking about Palantir. Long term, still very bullish on the stock. You just got to be careful when it's approaching the upper Bollinger Band and not get too greedy and try to buy some leaps call options or short-term call options on the stock when it's already rallied 86%, okay? You don't want to follow that hype that you see on YouTube. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the next stock, which is HIMS and HERS Health. This is a new one in the portfolio. The options are wild on this stock, and really the fundamentals are great on this stock too. They just had a partnership with Novo Nordisk for the semaglutide medication, and that's like the weight loss drug that everyone has been utilizing. And the PE ratio on this company is not too bad, okay? Not too bad for a highly, fast-paced growth stock. 76, of course, yes, it is, but it is slightly higher than and riskier than most stocks in the portfolio. But in a growth space, and if you look at Palantir, the PE ratio there is extremely much higher. Okay, so this would be classified as a riskier stock in the portfolio. But if we look at the stock, okay, after hours down, probably a few percent, maybe 4 or 5%. Okay, so this is an opportunity to get into it. But again, you don't want to be chasing up here. You want this thing to pull back. And then how do you play this? Well, the easiest and best way to play it is cash secured puts, which we'll get into in just a moment. But let's talk about their earnings. They beat earnings massively. Earnings per share, 24% surprise to the upside. And that's this quarter, okay? Revenue, 8%. Last quarter, it was 14 and 2. So they're doing even better. But because of that Novo Nordisk deal being announced prior to the earnings, that already took the move up, right? That already caused the stock to rally massively, right? About 50% in several days, okay? So you missed the move already, but there was a lot of advantage to selling cash secured puts. So let's go ahead and go to the position. As you can see, I have 3 May 9th, 30 puts. So for this week, I did the earnings cash secured puts, and I'm already up 82% of the premium on these. and very, very far away from the stock. And then I did some longer dated ones, 25 days out, the 28 puts, okay? And I'm already up 50% on those, all right? So let me show you on the chart kind of how far I was able to get away from the stock, right? So the 30s are right here. So that's a long ways away. And then 28s are even further, right? And I'm not counting the premium I collected too, which lowers my cost basis even more if assigned. But from highs, that's a 34% discount, okay? So I feel safe going very far out. Now let's go ahead. If I were to get into HIMS tomorrow, which I may actually put these on to kind of beef up this position because I only have about 2.5% of my portfolio here. I want to beef it up to maybe 5-6%, right? I'll go to the options chain. I'll go, we'll go 32 days out. And we'll just be safe and see how much we can collect at the 30 or the 19 delta here. The 20 delta would be a safe play. So let's calculate that. All right, so we'd make about let's go somewhere in the middle here. So like 150, okay, divided by 32. And that's gonna be about a 4.6% return on a safe 19 delta trade, okay? If you wanted to get more aggressive, I have some clients that got a little bit more aggressive here. They did, the 27 to 30 delta. If you did let's just say 27 delta, right? You're gonna make 249 divided by 35, right? That's a 7% return in 30 days, all right? Annualize that, that is 85% return on your money. So absolutely insane, definitely higher risk. So play this very conservatively. Don't over allocate your portfolio to this position, but definitely one where I like the fundamentals on the stock right now. Good earnings, solid growth story, and really good marketing in a high growth space. So I'm really liking HIMS and HERS Health. And if you look at why basically the stock didn't kind of keep going up after hours is because the company reported first quarter revenue, 586 million, compared to the expected 538, which was great, but it was disappointed by their second quarter revenue forecast of 530 million to 550, right? Versus the analysts had been expecting 563 million as a forecast. So their guidance has came in a little bit. The company basically said, hey, we don't think we're gonna make as much next quarter, so our guidance is gonna be a little bit smaller. And that kind of, that may spook some investors, as some investors were very bullish on, the future growth of this company. So the growth is still insane, but just not as insane for next quarter, probably due to tariff situation, due to, other factors, but definitely still a stock that I like for the portfolio. So if you enjoyed this video, if you like these updates, please hit the thumbs up button. That really helps the video get promoted in the algorithm. And I'm gonna link another video on the wheel strategy on Palantir, actually literally my favorite stock in the portfolio. So check that one out, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.